BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. The first thing I would like to say is thank you to anyone who has checked out our Zodiac Killer discussion and interview with Thomas Henry Horan. We've released the first part of that, and later this week we're going to be releasing the other segments. They're going to be coming out day by day. There should be 4, maybe more parts to that interview that are going to be coming out, and then that will all be put into a playlist. But yeah, so look out for some new uploads that are containing our interview with Thomas Henry Horan, a rather lengthy interview, but still some good content there. Now, moving on to the next topic for today, I saw in the news that there were a lot of articles that were going around discussing an individual named Corey Ballentine, a defensive back for the New York Giants, because in April of 2019, Corey Ballentine was involved with a very large tragedy. He was drafted in the 6th round by the New York Giants, and then, while he was out celebrating the good news, not only was he shot, but his best friend, Dwane Simmons, lost his life in a very, very bizarre and perplexing event. And because this is one of the cases that is quite unlike a lot of what we've done on the channel that are more lost to history, rather. This is one of those things where it's almost like you're chasing the news. And to ensure accuracy as well as possible, we're going to do it the way we kind of did during the discussions on In Young You from last year. And I highly recommend anyone check out our uploads that we did on the case of In Young You, the Korean girl who was accused of plotting her boyfriend's suicide. I'll hopefully include a link to that in the description box. But first, we're going to read the entire article here from WIBW News. And this was written by Steve Fry, just to give credit to him, because I really liked how this one introduced everything step by step. And once again, we are talking about Corey Ballentine and Dwane Simmons, as well as 3 other members of the Washburn University football team, were standing at Southwest 13th and Lane, celebrating Ballentine's being drafted by the New York Giants. An exhilarated Ballentine had talked to the NFL club about the draft and fielded questions from many sports reporters. "I was excited," said Corey Ballentine. "It was great. Everyone was having fun." Then a car pulled alongside the 5 men. "They stopped in front of us," Ballentine said. "The driver asked if we smoke marijuana. We said no, we don't smoke. Somebody in the back seat said, 'What's your name?' Someone in the circle responded and said, 'Don't worry about all that.' As they were pulling away, I could see the back of the car," Ballentine said. "Then I saw the car jerk and I heard, kind of like someone was stomping on the brakes. So it came to a sudden stop. And it kind of made a noise as it was stopping. And the first sound I heard, I just ran. Gunfire exploded, first sounding like shots from one gun, and the rate of the fire accelerated to sound like 2 firearms. Sounded like a handgun in my head, and they sped up, as if 2 handguns were firing," Ballentine testified. "I didn't see who shot. I just ran." Entering the hearing, and yes, before we talk about the hearing, we should really say we have these 5 guys that are standing there, Corey Ballentine, Dwane Simmons, as well as 3 others, and once they heard the gunshots, I mean, people just took off running, going in all different directions. And the perpetrator in this one is going to be Alejandro Mendez. And, Francisco Alejandro Mendez, to be precise, also known as Frankie. And in many places, he's also referred to as Francisco Mendez, but he's most commonly referred to just simply as Frankie, Francisco Alejandro Mendez. So the thing that we got to say that with that one is that I really give credit to NBC and the Associated Press for giving up some step-by-step coverage about the arrest of Francisco Alejandro Mendez, because they were talking about this right when it happened, right when they were able to catch the perpetrator, the person who shot Dwane Simmons and ended his life. And then this article here is from September of 2019. Entering the hearing, defendant Francisco Alejandro Mendez, also known as Frankie, age 18, was charged with premeditated first-degree murder of Dwane Simmons, attempted premeditated first-degree murder of Corey Ballentine, and 5 counts of aggravated robbery of 5 other victims. And yes, we'll see that they're not only talking about the 5 people that are standing on the street here, they are also talking about, we'll see that Francisco Alejandro Mendez was involved with a host of other criminal behaviors. After he was found over the charges, late on Monday, once again, this is from August of 2019, this article, District Attorney Mike Kagay added 3 more counts of attempted murder and 2 more counts of aggravated robbery. Simmons and Ballentine were shot in the early hours of April 28, 2019. After the gunfire ended, Ballentine called Simmons' phone 5 times, but Simmons did not pick up. Before the shootings, the small white 4-door car had been traveling north on Southwest Lane, then turned westbound onto Southwest 13th, before approaching the football players. I got hit and the bullet entered into my pelvis, Ballentine testified Monday in Shawnee County District Court. The bullet remains lodged in his right hip. He has recovered and he has joined the Giants camp a few weeks later. And to say that Corey Ballentine was immobile for a while, and he slowly began to walk, and then it took him several weeks before he was able to run again, as some other articles reported. WU football players, that's Washburn University football players Channon Ross, James Letcher, and Kevin Neal Jr. also testified Monday during the preliminary hearing of Simmons' death. The 5 men were standing in a circle, and Simmons and Ballentine planned to return to a party in the neighborhood, and the other 3 planned to go home, Letcher said. Witnesses testified the driver of the car was described as a light-skinned Hispanic. They also said they heard 20 or more gunshots, but small police cones marked 15 shell casings scattered on Southwest 13th Street. Vladimir Stryka, S-T-R-Y-K-A, Vladimir Stryka, testified he was in Central Park with friends on April 30th when a white car pulled up to the parking lot. When Stryka told the man to get the pistol out of his face, the robber pistol-whipped him on the forehead with a handgun. Stryka handed over his wallet and cell phone. Another victim, Kathy Kuhl, testified that of the 5 men exiting the car, 2 were armed with guns, and she zoned out, so she said. One robber banged on her car window and ordered her to give them her cell phone, she said. Another robber fired his pistol, shattering the window. The bullet struck the steering wheel, and the bullet landed on a seat occupied by a pregnant woman, Kuhl said. Kuhl handed the slug over to the police. Shawnee County District Judge Cheryl Rios is handling the Mendez case. And that concludes this article here. Once again, this was written by Steve Fry from WIBW 13 News. What do we say about this one? This was one that really took the sport world by storm. It's not just the sports world. It's everything. And originally, this was just going to be titled The Attempted Murder of Corey Ballentine, because he's somebody who's still receiving a lot of media coverage about this. But you really see that this is also the story of the murder of Dwane Simmons, because Dwane Simmons was a person as well. And it's almost unbelievable. I certainly cannot comprehend the emotions that people would be experiencing, because you're drafted by an NFL team, going to be a professional athlete, out celebrating, and your best friend is murdered. Just all you can say is just love and prayers. Heart goes out to the family of Dwane Simmons, as well as to Corey Ballentine, for surviving something such as that. But then all of these questions begin to be surrounded. And I was even reading on the Giants Wire. That's the first time I've ever referenced one of their articles on this channel. And what I would say about that is that we had just questions. They're like, what was going on with these guys? How did this situation happen? And Washburn University, to their credit, was very clear. They were like, Dwane Simmons and Corey Ballentine were not involved with this type of illegal activity. And you really see, though, that Frankie Mendez was the person who was the career criminal. At age 18, career criminal, absolutely. And I am so much reminded of the murder of Sean Taylor. We were talking about that one on this channel a couple weeks ago, and Sean Taylor was murdered by somebody named Eric Rivera, the defensive back for the Redskins we're talking about. And at the same time, Eric Rivera was 17 when he shot Sean Taylor, another career criminal. He had been previously busted for trafficking methamphetamine and cocaine. And you see here with Frankie Mendez, you see what he's doing. He is involved in a whole host of illegal activities, of various types of robberies. I mean, it sounds like petty theft or something, trying to steal somebody's cell phone, but once you're firing bullets into the car when a pregnant woman is present, it's absolutely heinous. And it just goes to show you the destruction that is within some people. And it goes back to that quote that we said when we were talking about the movie The Gray Man, when someone says that at some point in life, you have to stop looking at what happened to somebody and you have to look at who they are. And that really is the case when you're looking at somebody like Frankie Mendez. He probably went through some really bad experiences in his life if he is going to be this type of horrendous career criminal at the age of 18. But at the same time, he's going to keep on living, and Dwane Simmons will not. And that's what's really heartbreaking. But you really see how senseless this was as we read out that article from WIBW. It's just like, these guys are walking down the street, they stop for a second, and this car pulls up, and in an unprovoked attack, that's what it was, an unprovoked attack, they start firing. And, Corey Ballentine has been very open about discussing this. Of course, he testified at the hearing, but at the same time, he has also done some press coverage and press conferences, we should say. And he said the New York Giants have been very helpful to him. They've been giving him therapy. And I thank Corey Ballentine for talking about this in a public setting. But the big thing we really need to see with this one here is just that, destruction is something that knows very few boundaries. And these guys are just standing on a street corner. Someone comes over. Maybe they were attempting to rob them, or maybe they thought that they could possibly extract some drugs from the guys. We don't necessarily know, and we'll probably know more things once the trial comes out, but at the same time, it's just like, it was a senseless murder. There really is no justification. What could Frankie Mendez really say that's really going to justify this? It's just going to be like, there is no justification. Francisco Alejandro Mendez was going to use the insanity defense, actually, and they were going to say that he was not competent to stand trial. And in reality, the psychiatrist that was interviewing him was saying that he was being unresponsive and that he just wasn't cooperating with the psychiatric examination. So at first they're like, okay, this guy just isn't necessarily mentally fit to stand trial. But then, thanks to the recordings of the police department, they have all kinds of recordings. Some people have been supporting Frankie Mendez, saying they genuinely believe that there's more to the story that other people are leading on, and he was interacting with them. All of these things are recorded, as is routine, I can imagine, because Frankie Mendez was being held on the bail was set at $1 million, I believe, but the whole point is, he's interacting with lots of people. He's also talking to his family members from behind bars, and all of that was recorded. And after the psychiatrist viewed those recordings, he's like, okay, this guy is probably competent to stand trial. It's just very simply that he just wasn't being cooperative with the psychiatrist during the examination in an attempt to use the insanity defense. I don't know if the lawyers have encouraged him to do something like that, or he came up with it on his own, or very simply he is just not wanting to answer questions to a psychiatrist because that whole thing about passive resistance, you just stay blank as long as you possibly can. I also learned a new phrase recently. It's called paralyzing the conversation, where someone just sort of pretends like they aren't really receiving what you're saying, and then they'll just sort of not really respond to your suggestions or to your ideas, and then at some point you're just going to give up and let them do what they want. It's called paralyzing the conversation. I just heard of that recently. But in all reality, I mean, once you see, though, multiple people, you just heard from two other cases of assault and aggravated robbery that Frankie Mendez was involved with. So he is someone that was out of control, very destructive. And I'm also reminded of some of the things that we said recently on our upload War Machine, the assault on Christy Mack, when you had somebody, the UFC fighter Ken Shamrock was talking about War Machine, John Copenhaver, and he's saying he is too dangerous to be out on the streets. Is that what's going on with Frankie Mendez? It seems like it. Is that what was going on with Eric Rivera and the murder of Sean Taylor? It seems like it. And what we can say about Eric Rivera was he was sentenced, convicted, sentenced to 57 years in prison, and perhaps something similar would really happen with Frankie Mendez, but what we can see right here is that Dwane Simmons was taken much too soon, taken before his time. And, somebody like Corey Ballentine almost lost his playing career, but more importantly, almost lost his life being shot. The bullet actually entered his buttocks, got lodged into his pelvis. And, just going out to celebrate being drafted by the NFL and something like this happens. And you see these things all the time. You do. You know you do. We see this on the evening news. All sorts of tragedies that are caused by the destructions of human beings, the destructive actions of other human beings. Greed, power, dominance, recreating the cycle of destructive behaviors. All of these things happen. And they happen time and time again. But the thing is, though, there is no justification for it. And it really seems like this guy, Francisco Alejandro Mendez, was just out of control. And in our world, in our societies, there are going to be people that are out of control, who are going to be going down some very destructive pathways. And in all reality, I don't think that this is a good thing to say, but it's like, if they put this guy away, he'll be off the streets. I mean, he won't be able to pull a handgun on a group of people. 2 handguns, we got somebody else firing in the car. So it's like, he won't be able to do those types of destructive actions again. And I think that's where we're going to have to leave it as now. And once again, I would just like to say thank you to Steve Fry for the article that we read. Thanks to the Giants Wire, the Associated Press, NBC News, ABC News for releasing a video segment on this, and as well as just Corey Ballentine for his public appearances. But what I would say about this is that when ABC News did their little segment talking about this, they're just like, Dwane Simmons was shot and murdered, and Corey Ballentine was shot. But they just were like, they didn't know what happened. And I think that really added a certain sense of mystery to this. When they're just like, well, they're saying that they're waiting for more developments to come, which they have to do. That's the concept of chasing the news. But in reality, we can't just let people leave it at that. We got to find out the truth. And we really learn is that whatever narrative anyone was trying to spin, there really isn't much to say other than, love and prayers going out to the family of Dwane Simmons. It's great that Corey Ballentine can still continue his career in the NFL, and he wasn't injured in a more serious way. And we will be following some updates once the trial of Francisco Alejandro Mendez takes place, the trial of Frankie Mendez. Once we can find out more detail, we'll do a follow-up on this one. But if you have anything to say at all about this case, I would love to hear from you, and you can drop something in the comments section below. If you like this upload, you can hit the like button, and if you haven't subscribed yet, you're welcome to do so. Also, please check out our upload on the case of In Young Yu. We'll have a link posted to that one. And to the people following the Zodiac Killer series, we will have the following segments with our interview with Thomas Henry Horn coming out later this week. That's all for me now. Until next time.